Je m'appelle Kimberly Hayes de Movement.
Oui, oui. And I'm Amanda Day,
And you're listening to the Fundraising HayDay podcast, y'all.
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising in a variety of languages, apparently.
You know, the spirit moved me, and so I spoke. But more importantly, we're doing this podcast so we can all learn how to do a better job of changing the world through philanthropy.
True. And Patreon subscribers can get these episodes early. Well, hello, officially. Bonsoir, I guess. Thanks so much for joining the podcast today. Before we share today's incredible interview with you, I want to remind folks that Kimberly and I are bringing all of this knowledge we have that we already share on the podcast with our 50 plus years combined experience, have brought all that to bear in the creation of the Grants Lab, which is our 8-week intensive grant training. We are providing over 14 hours of training spread out across 8 weeks. There's 2 one-on-one coaching calls with organizations. We ask for folks to submit previously denied grant proposals. We'll review one of those from your organization and provide feedback, which can be especially helpful. I know there's a couple of grants that I had to apply to multiple times before we finally just got that sweet spot and got our foot in the door. So I would have loved years ago to have gotten feedback from an expert that could just, because sometimes it's just like, hey, you talked a lot about this and you really should only have mentioned, like, that's not as important as this, or your budget wasn't very clear, or whatever it is, because you don't always get feedback from your funder. So having an experienced person to come in and help out with that is clearly we feel very, very helpful, which is why it's one of the many aspects we included. We wanted the Grants Lab to be more than just 2 talking heads sharing information, because sharing of information through talking heads is clearly a great way to learn. That's why we do the podcast. But to really deep dive and learn and understand and have follow up, it's so much more helpful, I think, to have that feedback, which is why we have writing assignments each week. And if you want to participate in that, you get great feedback from us. And at the end of the Grants Lab, you have a template for a grant proposal for one of your organization's programs. So that's not a bad thing to have after the end of some grant training. So if you want to learn more about the Grants Lab, visit our website at heydayservices.com and click on the Grants Lab link there. And we encourage you to find when our next cohort is and register, or maybe sign up for our wait list to stay abreast of when new cohorts are going to take place. So check out the Grants Lab today.
As Amanda said, it's all about collaborative learning and sharing and training. That's what we do. So we were delighted to find 2 other grant professionals who also find collaboration a deeply meaningful thing. It's a word that a lot of people toss around in grant applications, in business meetings. It's usually used with, the words like pivot, paradigm shifting, and other business speak. But for real,
Yeah.
it's something that's incredibly transformative. It's easy to talk about, but it's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not limited, as I said, to programs or grant writing, even in the field of grants. So we were delighted to close out our marathon session of podcast interviews at the 2024 Grant Summit, powered by the Grant Professionals Association, with 2 queens of collaboration. Amanda, would you do the honors?
I would love
And
to.
our royalty. Yes, go ahead.
So we spoke with Dana Patterson, who is the Director of Development at Kidango, Inc., an independent grants consultant and a national trainer for Grant Writing USA. Dana does a lot of things. Like, I'm wondering, she must have more hours in the day than me, because that girl is busy. In 2022, Dana was recognized as one of 5 outstanding young professionals by the Association of Fundraising Professionals. I'm not at all surprised. We also had Melody Hernandez. She is the founder and principal of Root Reach Rise, Inc., a San Francisco-based firm focused on helping nonprofit organizations. Her background as an educator gives her a unique perspective that she brings to her current role, disseminating valuable information while also giving clients the tools and resources they need to propel their organizations to the next level. Again, we recorded this in a busy exhibit hall during the 2024 Grant Summit, so there's going to be a little bit of background noise, but we hope you enjoy listening as much as we did.
So listen, y'all, we are thrilled to have Kim Joyce and Associates returning as the season 8 sponsor for the first half of our season 8, which is crazy. CEO Kim Joyce and her team are celebrating 15 years of success with new service lines, all while expanding the depth and the breadth of their existing services. Kim is joining us to talk about trends in the field and more with a mini series that you'll hear at the beginning of each of the 12 episodes that Kim Joyce and Associates are sponsoring this season. So Kim, in the last episode of Fundraising, HayDay, you introduced your agency's government services line and talked a little bit about that. And I'm guessing that there's also a big focus that you have on federal grant proposals. So how does KJA keep up with all of the changes and federal grant trends, especially as we're going from one administration to another in 2025?
Yes, we definitely have to be informed of all things. Our government team is in the trenches every day, doing research to keep abreast of any changes, as are the rest of our staff here. And we really need to keep an eye on what's going on with the federal grant landscape. And we have to be informed of everything in order to give our clients the proper guidance and proper consulting. So really, it's just day in and day out, being abreast of any changes, continually doing research and figuring out what is happening with the grant landscape.
Well, I'm glad that y'all are on the job.
To find out more about Kim Joyce and Associates and their many incredible service lines, visit kimjoyceandassociates.com. They are a one-stop shop for all your grant-related needs.
All right, so Dana and Melody, welcome to the Fundraising HayDay podcast. As you know, we are recording this in 2024, although our listeners and viewers will see it in 2025. And we're actually all here together at the Grant Summit, powered by the Grant Professionals Association, in the exhibit hall on the day that they're breaking things down. And so there might be some noise, and we're all okay with that. So we hope that our listeners and viewers will be okay with that. I think, yeah, we're cool.
Yep.
So we'd love to just jump in with one of my favorite parts of every interview I think we've ever done. I love this. I always want to know how, like, people's origin stories into the world of grants. And we've done more than 140 episodes, a ton of interviews. And now I think we're up to three people who have actually knew that they wanted to get into grant writing.
Or the nonprofit field.
But I also stand behind it that they didn't know when they were like, I want to be a nurse. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a grant writer. I mean, but I feel that they came to it really early, like maybe pre-college.
Yes.
Okay. So I would love to hear from each of you. And I think we can start with you, Melody, like how you got into grants. But I am remiss, and I told myself to do this, and I forgot. So first of all, I want to congratulate you on receiving the GPA President's Award.
Yes.
2024. That's amazing. And I loved hearing about all the cool things that you did that we talked about in the intro today. But congratulations and well deserved.
Thank you. It was a very unexpected honor.
Nice.
I was like, wait, this email got sent to the wrong person.
Oh, no.
I had to verify. Are you sure you meant me?
Where it needed to be. That's
Thank
amazing.
You.
So thank you.
you.
So what drew you into the wonderful world of grants?
So I actually started my career as an educator.
Mm-hmm.
I was a classroom teacher, and my foray into the grant world was as a part of the grants committee, wondering why they kept telling us to buy more furniture and more books and couldn't raise our salary. And I thought, something's wrong here. This was actually Head Start. I started with early childhood.
Got it.
So I was like, why do you have all this money for us to buy more toys and books and this and that? There's got to be a way that we can get our salaries bumped up, right? And this was, I was actually still in college when I started at Head Start. And so I joined the grants committee and, found out, sure enough, there's such a thing as restricted funding. And no, we couldn't just like move it over to a different line item.
True, but also frustrating and a little mysterious when you're not right in it.
And that is, I think, what drew me to grant world is like, I want to see behind the curtain, right? And then I realized that as I started like interviewing at, like my next position was at a K-12 school. And when I was interviewing to get a position that was at kindergarten and above, I found that was the thing on my resume that they were the most interested in. It was like, oh, you're on the
Sure.
grants committee, right?
Ah.
We have a grants committee, as it so happens, and would you join our grants committee if we hired you? So I was like, oh, this is actually a really good resume builder, and a way to be valuable to the school is to help support their grant work. Of course, it wasn't really like writing grants at that point, but it was a little bit more like helping with the grant management, or doing like the little classroom grants that you can get from like Target or Walmart, right? The little $600 ones.
Yeah, but it's grant writing.
It is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So that was my start, and then there was a parent on PT. I moved out here to San Francisco. I'm not in San Francisco right now, but I moved out to San Francisco and met a parent who had a parent at my school. Her son was in my class, and she still has a little boutique grant development firm, a fund development firm. And I said, hey, like, we've worked on a couple of projects together on the PTA. We work really well together. Do you think that maybe I could like almost do like an internship with you to learn more about grant work?
Nice.
To help get the school I was at was like Title I. I was given a bare classroom. I'm like, I need, some support for my class. And she said, oh my goodness, I'm so busy. Like, can you subcontract for me? And like, I want to bring you on to help out with some work. And so, I was teaching and doing a little bit of grant work on the side. And did that for a couple of years. And during that process of that, the first grant proposal that I wrote kind of more independently, I won. And it's like the gambler who goes to the casino the first time and wins big. You're like hooked. You're like, this is for me.
The first hit is free.
Right. So, and then also I noticed that like through my grant work, I was able to directly address some of the societal inequities that I was seeing the results of in my classroom. And I felt like there was really only so much I could do in 9 months with like 30 kids when there's so much, your hands are kind of tied as a classroom teacher, and you can't always do the work that you're trying to do, which is to make the world a better place, right? Yes. And so I felt like actually through grant work, I am making a bigger difference in the community, and it's beyond these 30 kids. And so slowly started doing more and more grant work, and then ended up transitioning into a full-time career a couple of years later.
Nice.
And have I was a little sad at first to not work every day with kids, but I did an after-school tutoring program for the first year to kind of keep my hand in the teacher game. But then have not looked back. This is the career for me.
Some board members can be childlike at times.
Yes,
they're
very true.
Using those
Very
skills,
true.
transferable skills.
Yes.
Transferable skills.
Yes, some of my
say what I
clients will
said.
say, "Oh, that brought out teacher melody mode."
And you're like, why, yes.
Yes, it did.
Yes,
Now,
it
calm
did.
down, everyone. We have a lot to get through today.
So, all right, Dana, what's your origin story? How did you get into the grants?
Yeah, so I might be one of 4 people now.
Oh,
we have
Big.
one.
Yeah.
I know, I almost wanted to pound the table. That's a sound no-no.
Yeah, so I went to a public high school, Title I high school. We got more funding by having the school broken up into different communities, small learning communities.
Oh,
So mine
interesting.
was Future Leaders for Social Change Academy.
Wow.
And so our curriculum was around the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Like, I took sociology of urban issues as a class. The Bobby Seale from the Black Panthers
yeah.
came. He farted in front of me twice and it was amazing.
Talk about brush with fame.
Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nuts. But anyway, so I knew I
I
wanted
think we have another idea for a podcast. Famous people who have farted near me today.
But I knew I wanted to get into nonprofits, and went to college and graduated, and my mom was like, you're a good writer and you want to work with nonprofits. Nonprofits need money. Look into grant writing. So I took a course.
Go mom.
Number
I
4.
know.
Number 4.
She's the best.
Yes.
No, you're number
And-
4.
Yes. And so took online course through local community college and started subcontracting for a premier firm in the Santa Barbara area, and slowly grew my clients. But at the time I was, just out of college and saw it as like a digital nomad, I think before the term was used much. So like,
Trendsetter.
oh yeah, it's just me. But yeah, so like was able to travel around the country while like working in a coffee shop for a few hours, going in the car, and yeah, so it was good time. Was able to work at breweries, work on program staff direct with nonprofits, but just like grew it from there until transitioning to full time and all the other stuff that I do. But
Wow,
yeah, I think
nice.
number 4.
Any other famous people farted around you that we just Bobby Seals? I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
Farts. Yeah.
as far as that goes. Sorry, Amanda.
Things we never thought we'd hear.
She's veering off topic. Oh, I guess note
We-
to listeners and viewers, this is our last interview of the conference. So I have to apologize for my inner 5th grade boy
You get a little
surfacing.
slap happy after
But
all this.
he's there.
He's there. So, well, clearly Kimberly and I love a good partnership. Otherwise, I don't think we would have made it past season 1 of the
No,
podcast if
that's
that
a
wasn't
no.
a thing. So peer-to-peer consulting partnerships in the grants field is still a relatively new thing. And so I've got kind of a 2-parter for y'all. Why do you think that is? And what are the biggest deterrents that you've seen or experienced in that work? So can we start off with Dana?
And may I add, based on our earlier conversation
Yes.
in the green room, by that I mean we're sitting around talking before we started recording, that it's not necessarily tied to grant writing, right? It could be any kind of, we define
Yes,
a
partnership.
podcast is not, we've never written grants, so it just, let's expand.
Well, we've written lots of grants. We've
Not
never done it together.
I've never written a grant.
The bomb has been dropped.
Never. Imposter.
It's Milli Vanilli all over again.
Girl,
don't-
you know it's true.
Ooh, I love you. Okay.
So with that in mind, not the terrible Milli Vanilli
That was bad.
copyright violation
Sorry.
we just committed, but for
Can you
for people,
copyright people who were actually
Ooh.
lip syncing? I mean,
Somebody does own that copyright.
yes, that's
somewhere.
true. Somebody, the original
Yeah.
gentleman who sang that song, right?
that's true.
Okay, sorry. So,
So they collaborated.
yes, they did.
And they were not writing grants.
Yes.
So we want to broaden
Yes.
the definition of when we talk about collaboration, not limited to writing grants.
So,
Yeah, Melody and I discussed it and think that as far as like the sharing clients or writing grants or just partnerships in general, I think that if you're a full-time organization, almost there's kind of Hunger Games, right? Like you all have talked about that,
For sure.
right? And so just kind of that can be an aspect of it. And then as far as consultants go, I think that there is like pressure to be an expert or that you know everything. And so when you engage in partnerships, it might be exposing, like showing some vulnerability that there are some areas that
That's true.
I'm not 100% the best at
Yeah.
every single thing I do.
That's true. I never thought about it that way, but thank you. That's true.
Yeah, and I think also there's a misconception that we can graduate from, and I did that in air quotes,
yes.
yeah, graduate from subcontracting agreements or those types of things. And I think that those mindsets limit us for partnerships that benefit ourselves, our organizations, and our communities. Other things might be like, what will the client think about these partnerships or these types of projects? So yeah, and just different can be untested, and that can be scary. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's about defining the word, collaboration, right? I don't know
Right.
that many people think of, the fact that I subcontracted when I first started was a collaboration, right? They might not necessarily look at it that way, and maybe feeling that's more of a hierarchical relationship, and maybe a collaboration needs to be more of like we're equals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we view collaborations as all kinds of different things, and so but on the other hand, I think a lot of people get into grant work because, and like for example myself, I was like envisioning that I'm just gonna sit somewhere with my laptop with like classical music playing and candles, right, and typing on my computer, nobody's going to talk to me, which was actually very appealing when I was a classroom teacher to imagine
Straight
this
up.
life where I didn't have 8,000 Ms. Hernandez, right?
Sticky fingers.
Yeah, and I think this is something that people are drawn to this profession because it is maybe more of like, say, an introverted or solitary type,
Can be.
parts of it are. And now, don't get me wrong, I spend a lot of hours by myself in front of a computer, not always with candles burning or classical music playing. And I do enjoy that. I love the days that it's like, no, nothing on the books. I get to put on my headphones and type, and write. But that being said, I feel like from the start, I was doing it collaboratively. I was subcontracting when I first started. And then even as I started getting my own clients directly, there were a lot of different types of projects that I would take on that were collaborative. And through the course of that, I realized that I was much more effective in the work I did. And ultimately, again, I got into this work to make the world a better place. And at the end of the day, even if it's not my favorite to do group projects, if I know that the communities that I'm trying to support or get funding into are going to benefit from me having to kind of like put on my big girl pants and do some group projects, I'm going to do it. And then I started to like love it. I started to love the collaborative
Nice.
projects. So I do the model I use most often probably is a shared client model. So I'll have another consultant. We'll have a contract with the client. I have a contract with that client. No subcontracting. We both just have a direct contract with the client. And we get to define our own parameters in those contracts. But we meet together as a team. We divvy up projects. I learn from them. They learn from me. We get to bounce ideas off of each other. If we're having client management issues, we can call each other up, figure out a collective approach of how to, maybe set better boundaries or do whatever it is. And for the many years I wasn't doing as much collaboratively, I was feeling really alone as like kind of like I was a one person shop, right? And I always had to have that client facing persona on and couldn't, necessarily, or I'd call up Dana and complain about a client and she maybe didn't get it because she's like, you don't understand, I love them, but this thing they're doing is driving me crazy, right? And then when you share a client, you're like, is this bothering you too? And if they're like, yeah, okay, let's sit down together and figure out how we're going to do this. Other times they're like, no, I think you completely misread the tone of that client. And then you can be like, oh, okay, like that gives you better perspective. But then ultimately, I think the grant proposals that we submit are so much stronger because we can be final eyes on each other, do a final read through of each other's proposal. And we can, if I'm really stuck on a certain part or if I'm saying, what do you think the funder means by this? And we've also just like shared so many different tools and resources and like, just like how to organize the work and do the project management. And you can take a vacation and the other person can just keep things going and keep an eye on the grants email and everything. So I found a lot of benefits of doing it that way. Oh, wow. I was supposed to be talking about deterrence and I went way off topic.
No, that's okay. That's all fantastic stuff. Well, and I have a follow-up before if we want to we go to deterrence or not.
It's our podcast. We can do
I'm fascinated by that. Sounds so fabulous. And I'm trying to wrap my brain around.
That is exactly what I was going to ask.
So you each have separate contracts with them.
Yep.
But you're still working collaborative. Does that mean like you're maybe doing the federal grants and this other person's doing the foundation grants and you help each other out crossways sometimes? Or like, I'm sure it could be anything, but I'm trying to, what is that? Like if you're both doing grant writing, how are you splitting up?
Yeah. So I do this model with I've done it now with several different consultants. And so it's always a little different.
Okay.
And it depends on it. So I have one person that we've shared, I think 4 different clients now, or maybe 5. And her and I just like, we know each other so well. We know, like, we don't even have to barely talk about it. Like, I'm taking that one. She's taking that one. Or I'm going to do this part. She likes to do the, like, let me keep the grant spreadsheet, like the tracker all organized and stuff. And I'm like, have at it, But if there's something where, the funders, sent this back and wants edits and we only have 48 hours to get it back to them, that's where I shine, right? Like, that puts her in a panic. When anything unexpected happens, she's like, I don't like that, right? That stresses her out to no end. And sometimes we have unexpected things happen, and actually that like kind of quick turnaround from a vendor wanting not even really rewrites, but whatever they wanted additional information just happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to talk about it. The client knew, that's a Melody thing, right?
Yeah.
And so but then I have another client that I share that they have, it's a youth after school program, and they have education stuff and sports and all these different things, and an art program.
Mhm.
And I do their art program grants, and that's just the part that I do.
Yeah.
And so, but then when there needs to be, if there's another one that comes up and maybe the other consultants are busy, then I can, roll up my sleeves and pitch in. And then there's, usually I've had it happen a couple times where it's maybe, a newer relationship. We don't know each other super well. So we just go through and, equally divide up. If there's 2 proposals coming up and 2 reports, I take one proposal, 1 report,
Yeah.
they take 1 proposal, 1
Yeah.
report, and just divvy it up that way.
Yeah.
And then, generally it ends up being, in my experience, personally, I've had it just kind of naturally work out, that it just kind of division of labor. Now, that being said, I did have a colleague who recently had a shared client situation where they had put in a bid to, and the client had actually chosen 2 contractors and didn't tell them. They just said, okay, after they signed the contract, they're like, oh, by the way, we like this other person too. And they were kind of put into a situation of not really having any time to prepare for this, and it didn't go as smoothly. So I don't want to make it sound like it's
shocked.
always rainbows.
No, I'm sitting here thinking you must really know and trust these people you're doing this with, because I
Yes.
wouldn't just do that with anybody, because
Yes.
I wouldn't want to be dumped on or
Yeah.
taken advantage of, and I
Yeah,
have to think
but
that-
at the end of the day, like if they, for example, if they say they're going to do a project and don't do it, that's really between the client and them, right?
That's true.
So
That's
that's
true.
the nice thing when it's subcontracting or subcontractors. Sometimes like you're left holding the bag. In this situation,
that's true.
it's like you're not obligated to clean up the mess of them because it's 2 distinct.
Yeah,
Contract. That's kind of
true.
what I like about it. Is kind of like there's a little bit not my circus, not my monkeys.
Sure.
Like that's the client's gonna
Yeah.
have to figure out if they like working with this
Okay.
person. And I mean, in those situations, I would suggest maybe not cleaning up too many of their messes. Otherwise,
No.
you're gonna be always stuck doing it. But like,
Yeah.
not to say it's always perfect, but grant work never is always perfect. So
That's fascinating. I never would have thought about that model at all.
That's why we do the podcast.
This is true. This is true.
So, if we're thinking about now moving into sort of deterrence and things to think about, you were just prescient in your answering of the question, because the next question that I have has to do with maybe things that you wish you had known before you started collaborations, not necessarily with each other, but through these, through these shared models or whatever that might be. What are some things that you were like, wow, I wish I had known that? Like maybe the cleaning up the messes, maybe some other things, and maybe taking those things and forming them into, are those the things that you would advise grant professionals to know or think about before they start collaborating and whatever it is they're doing?
Well, I think part of it is, I think as the older I've gotten, the more I've kind of realized that I've been very had a lot of negative feelings in my life around being angry at expectations, and then I kind of realized like, are those really the expectations other people have, or am I just assuming
Okay.
that these are the expectations other people have, right? And then that kind of made me question even further to say like, well, but then maybe I get to set my own boundaries. Maybe I get to just decide this is what I like to do, and these are the services I'll offer. Like, I guess, as a way of saying, like, when I first became a grants consultant, I felt like, well, I'm a grant consultant. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And, it is also a point of privilege to get farther enough in your career that you don't have to do all of it. You can kind of pick and choose. But I also think that, like, kind of starting out with that mindset a little more, if it's the type of work that you enjoy and the type of work you're good at, it's actually probably going to be more economically beneficial to you, or you're going to your business is going to thrive faster. The times that I kind of forced myself to do something because I felt like I had to do that because I was a grant consultant, and that's what grant consultants do, right?
Yeah.
Those are the times that I'm guessing that client or that colleague that I partnered with probably wasn't recommending me to other clients because maybe I didn't shine, right?
Yeah.
Not that I did
Right.
poorly, but it's
That's
just
fair.
that's not where I shined, you know? So I think taking that thought into collaborations and really kind of thinking, starting with what do I want? What are the situations I want to do? Because you don't have to do a certain type of collaboration. There isn't a roadmap. And if there
It's
is,
true.
you drew it yourself, right?
Right.
Like, so I think part of it is really, before you go too far down this path, is really kind of taking some time to reflect and evaluate on what are the parts that I enjoy about this work. What am I good at? What do I want from a partner? Are you looking for them to take some of the to-dos off of your list, or are you looking for them? Are you looking to learn and grow? Are you, because all of these things are going to help define what is a good partnership, and help you recognize it when you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you don't ever have to collaborate with anybody. I just want to put
That's
that out
true.
there.
It's very
You
true.
don't have
Well,
to.
and all of that. I mean, we've talked several times on the podcast about the thing about consulting is obviously there's ethical and moral and laws you have to follow, right? But beyond that, it's your business. You build it how you want. And yeah, it can be very easy to think, well, I'm a grant professional, so that means that I have to start this way and I have to have 5 clients and I have to do it this way and then I have to hire a subcontractor and then before you know it, I have to have an employee and suddenly I'm not writing grants and I'm managing your business. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I love this is a beautiful model.
Yay. No, I think that's a huge thing is like I'm going back to deterrence is like, I should do this. I have to do this. What is the status quo, right? And I think when you think bigger and partnerships, like you said, like it's not necessarily sharing a client or grant work, but doing presentations or professional development or those types of things. Like looking at status quo, saying what are the things that I like that are there and work for me, and what are ones that don't, and leave those and keep the ones that work for you. And then going back to your question about what wish I had known, I think it's similar to just relationships in general, just
Yeah.
communication,
Yes.
knowing yourself better, right? Kimberly, Amanda, and I all did Dare to Lead. We were in the same cohort. And I swear to God, that was so beneficial for making me a better human, but also how to interact with people in the workplace and what I'm bringing. And so knowing myself, I think would be strong. And oh my God, there was another one. But
If it comes back, just let us know. It made me think about clear as kind, which is sort of getting to both of your points about that. That's like one of the catchphrases or useful tools, really, from Dare to Lead, and it's about communication. Not I need this and I need that, but it's like just being clear about what you want to do or what you offer and what you don't offer.
Yes.
Was that was
and
okay.
related to that, see that segue?
So I love
Natural,
it.
right? Is knowing, like being clear with your own time, right? A lot of collaborations happen outside of the 9 to 5 work hours, if those are your work hours, right? And so do you have the time and space to give the person that you're doing a partnership with or for a project or for the client enough time, energy for it to be successful? Then I feel like when I first getting into collaboration there a few years ago, I'm like, I want to do this and this and this, and it's all going to be great. And then kind of paring down through the like retreats and stuff that I almost like internally is like, okay, let me like reflect and see how what I have time and space for to really dedicate and stuff. And so I think that my partnerships have been more successful since doing those evaluations. But we were still very successful early on before I did all that too. So
We've
I
been
don't really
nothing
know.
but successful.
Yeah, that's
100%.
Yeah.
I do have to say, as a type of collaboration, one type is to, kind of take on subcontractors and, start engaging in those relationships. And I think just kind of knowing how much time it takes to put the systems in place to have subcontractors eventually get to the point that it's less work and not more. So you really have to build it. And I think for other types of collaborations too, very often underestimating the number of hours and maybe even the mental bandwidth and the energy that goes into creating a working system. And sometimes, like, now I feel like I have a lot of systems that are running pretty smoothly, especially with shared client models and things. But it's like, thinking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't always, like, right, like, we did work to make sure that these were running smoothly, and building in the time and space to do that, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's, yeah, getting on a call, one-on-one call with the person, having that a part of the schedule with the person you're sharing clients with, scheduled in once a month or something to kind of, do this. For a while with one of the people I share a client with, we would have a half-hour check-in right before we would jointly meet with the client to make sure we were on the same page, because we had shown up to a couple calls not really on the same page, and then kind of had to hash things out in front of the client to get to the same page. So we realized, let's do that behind the curtain. Like, the client doesn't need to see that. And not to say that you always have to agree. I think one of the things I like about sharing clients and working with subcontractors and all these different models when you actually are doing the grant work is because when there are these disagreements, sometimes that does result in a stronger program model. It results in a stronger proposal, because even if it's something that we realize we have to speak to that, because somebody on the review panel might have that same approach, or maybe that program does need to be strengthened, or maybe that grant isn't a good fit and you need to, like, really sit down and figure out, do we have the bandwidth to do it right now? Is this a good use of resources? All of this ultimately ends up in more stronger, successful programming and more stronger and successful grant work. So I'm not saying you always have to agree, but certain things, maybe, make sure you're on the same page before you argue in front of a client.
Is it like putting in the work to build consensus?
Yes.
Before you could. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Going back, Melody mentioned, creating systems and time and place. And I think even outside of client stuff, Melody and my collaborations, like, started out, I think the first one was local GPA chapter presentations. And then the big project that we had was co-authoring with Rhonda Poppin of Grant Dog, a GPA journal article. And
that's a lot of work.
It was, but it made it so
you
much.
Spread it out, yeah.
Yeah, and it made it so much more.
I've always done one with somebody else, never alone, because I'm like, it's a lot.
So much more approachable, right? Mm-hmm. But the three of us together, we could do it. But we started out meeting monthly or bi-weekly, made it a system, got into the habit of it. Then when the project was done, submitted, we had already had this space to say, okay, what about we present at the national conference? We've done local, and just kind of started using that time to work on projects, or, take a break, share experiences. That's like a venting set, right? Or like just brainstorm with each other. But we have these time and place where then it's like, okay, what's our next project, right? And so yeah.
And then Dana would say, okay, this year I'm going to do this and list out 5 things. And I'd say, okay, I'm in for number 2 and number 5. The rest you do on your own.
Yeah. And to be clear for our listeners, if you didn't catch in the intro, they don't work together. And you're full-time employed, right?
Correct.
At an organization. So you're doing some of this just in your spare time that you have. Well, and you're a full-time consultant, so your collaborations are probably happening outside of the regular work days, I'm guessing.
It's kind of making me think too that if you are, wherever you are, as a staff member or team member, as an employee or as a consultant, and you're wanting to get into different things like presenting or developing training or whatever it is you want to do, that this is a great way to start that process, is to work with someone else.
100%.
Right?
I mean, not even just getting started. I can't do anything without an accountability buddy. I really can't. But like, it is when people ask us, because one thing that really learned from Melody and she really emulates is just freely sharing resources and just how that uplifts all of us, right? And so we both have no problem talking to new grant pros of like, oh, I want to get into subcontracting. I work full time, but also want to do consulting or those types of things. And just number one recommendation is like, try it out, subcontract or bits and pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, when Dana says we kept that space, we literally kept a biweekly invite on the calendar from after when we were done with the journal article. We kept
Nice.
meeting
Yeah.
every 2 weeks. We still do
Nice.
every other Friday morning at 8:30. We get on a call together. If either of us need to, need like almost like a therapy session, we use it for that.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about our professional goals, we talk about that. If we're like, since we did do a presentation at this grant conference, the last few have been focused on preparing for that. And then just having that space carved out to get a little bit like, not always being elbows deep in the job, right? But like
Yeah.
having a little time to be like,
I love that.
Time and
so
what
much.
else is going on?
So
right?
it's really cute, actually. So we were like, we benefit from this space and this reflection time. Others can too. So we actually, through the local Greater Bay Area chapter, opened up the biweekly Coffee Connect and just called it that. And like and it's open for members, non-members, doesn't matter. People can come in. Sometimes it's just me and Melody, and sometimes there's 8 people on, and it's when it works for you. And then so we started having that, and people started showing up, and we were like, hey, we need our time too.
Yeah.
So then we schedule
Maybe
another
other
time.
Fridays.
So it's like it's Dana and Melody time
I miss just talking to you.
yeah. So I mean, we really value that space. I think
Yeah.
a lot of creativity happens when you allow yourself that
Yeah.
space.
Well, that's a good segue into what's your next collaboration, or do you know?
We are going to write a grant proposal together. We were like last night. We looked at each other. We're like, we've never done this.
Yeah.
We have to do it.
You do.
You've never done it together.
This is the thing.
Never done it together. Don't want to fall
Dana's-
into that trap again.
Dana's mother. Can I say this?
Oh yeah, of course.
So
Full
Dana's-
circle.
it's
Full circle. My
Full
mom got
circle.
me in.
Dana's mother started subcontracting for me.
Yeah. So she started in 2020. I was like, because I'm full time. I have clients, and I was like stretching myself thin. And she was like, "Hey Dana, do you need help?" And then later, a few weeks later, "Hey Dana, do you need help?" And I was like, "Okay, is this a joke or because she would kind of like laugh about it, and she's like,
And
"Is
she's
this
a retired lawyer, and she
Oh.
knows. Yeah,
anything
she's
that's
got
good
the
about
skill
me,
set.
I get it
She's
from
got
her.
the
Like
skill
she's
set.
yeah, she 100% does." And so she was like, "Oh, are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, if you want to." So she started subcontracting for me, getting her own clients, and then this summer,
And then she started. I had a personal matter happen in my family. I needed some help, and so
She came highly recommended.
She came in and just. I said, I got to focus on my kiddo, and she just totally helped out, holding down the fort while I was dealing with some family stuff, and then she started saying to both of us, she's like, "You guys do it so differently," and we're like, "What?"
like the amount of
She's
time
like,
that we spend
night and day.
together,
Night and day, she kept saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
and the amount of time we spend together and talk about our business
We're just
practices, and
mystified. How are we doing this so differently? I don't understand.
So you all figured that out,
She
huh?
hasn't been able to define
Yeah.
why it's so different.
and I am not
Just
offended,
that
Mom.
it
I am not
is
offended.
so
by it.
different.
She was like, "Are you?"
Just get that disclaimer out there.
And it's really funny to have like her experience working with both of us, and how Melody and I are aligned on so many projects and mission alignment with each other, and clearly just
Yeah.
do things
So we're
still
gonna
differently.
We're gonna find some like brand new organization that neither of us have ever worked with, and just be like, all right, let's do this, and
Yeah.
let's see like how it goes.
Yeah.
How are you doing this so differently
Yeah.
than me?
I love
So
that.
it was really great, you all helping us prepare
Yeah.
this, because we were like, yeah, I guess
gotta
we have
do
to
it.
write one
We
because
gotta
that's
do
what we
it.
thought this was. So.
Look at us
Yeah.
making dreams happen.
Fomenting new business ventures. Making dreams.
When Dana and Melody take over the grant writing space totally as a partnership, we'll be like, it
Don't
started
forget the
here
little
first,
people.
folks. Yes.
So, where is the best place for people to connect with each of you if they've heard something that resonated with them, want to know more, need some help writing grants or getting grants out, subcontracting, whatever it might be?
So I have I have a website that does have a way to sign up for my newsletter,
Okay.
as well as a way to sign up for a free half-hour consultation. And then I also am fairly active on LinkedIn, but that's ebbs and
Okay.
flows as I
So
depending on how many
what's your
deadlines.
website? We'll put it in the show notes, but if you want to just
Sure,
say it, if you
it's
don't mind.
so my firm's name is called Root Reach Rise So it's root. You have to say it very slow because if you go root retries, it's like you know.
Yeah.
So it's but I call it R cubed is like my.
I got you.
Yes.
That's copyrighted, so I have to actually say it out. But rootreachrise.com.
Nice. That's a
Okay.
great name.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just learned I have to sign up for your newsletter.
newsletter.
I don't think
What?
I have to
You're not
subscribe.
on news? Okay. Also, I just like officially launched my firm and just a couple months ago. So
Very
it's not-
exciting.
Yeah. Prior to that,
Early
I
days.
was,
You've got time.
Yeah. Still be an early adopter.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think I have 9, and like 2 of them are my own emails. 9 subscribers.
Hey, we start somewhere.
You got to start where you are.
For me, feel free. I'm awful on social media, but I do have a LinkedIn. That is the replacement for my website, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Link in the notes.
Yes,
And then
okay.
yeah. And then you can also email me at grants, grants.dana, DANA @gmail.com. And I recommend to everyone, we have that bi-weekly coffee connect. We have it for a space like anyone come in, you can just talk to us, like bring your challenges, your questions, your stories.
It's free to everyone, members and non-members.
It makes us all stronger.
So
and
8:30 Pacific. I'm
8:30
assuming.
8:30 Pacific,
every
yeah.
other
Which is
Friday.
super palatable
Yeah.
on the East Coast because it's like almost
Yeah,
lunchtime.
right?
We did
And-
because there's just not as
Yeah.
many meetings for us between clients and full-time positions.
And since the pandemic, there's not as many spaces that are just like that are not structured, right?
That's true.
And including in our own chapter, right?
Yeah.
I'm the current president of the Bay Area chapter, and you know we do our monthly chapter meeting is generally professional development. Dana and I met because back prior to the pandemic, we would do an once a month in-person chapter meeting, and then we'd all go out for happy hour afterwards.
Fun.
And Dana
Yeah.
and I probably wouldn't have formed as strong as a friendship had it just been the hour of professional development.
Fair.
That
It
makes
was that
sense.
hour of happy hour afterwards
Yes.
that got us really connecting with each other.
There were lots of margaritas mentioned in a previous
Yeah,
interview,
we're-
so
we're
we're
seeing
feeling happy
themes.
hour. Yes.
Russian
Yeah.
studies and
Yes.
movies.
So we had discussed like creating a space that is just about connecting and
Nice.
networking and not having the professional.
And so we'll make
development.
sure to get that link
Yeah.
from
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
and do
Oh,
that.
and it's hosted by GPA, so it is on the GPA
Oh.
events calendar.
Even better.
You
Perfect.
sign up for each individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And is there every other week?
Yep.
For eternity, I
I
guess.
love it.
That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you both so much.
Yes,
Thank
it's
you
fun.
so
I
much.
always, it's such an honor. I get to just learn and have fun.
If you had told me I was going to sing Milli Vanilli today, I would not have believed you. But
I mean,
we were here. We're here.
I'm not
I
mad
love
about it.
Yeah. Thanks,
We
guys.
stand behind it.
Thank you.
so
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to today's sponsor, Kim Joyce and Associates. If you want to learn more about their many service offerings, visit kimjoyceandassociates.com. That's KIMJOYCE and associates.com.
Listen, I don't know about you, Amanda, but I love hearing about that sort of co-clienting, co-consultant approach to working with clients. I'm all about co-creation, so I was delighted to learn more about it. Whether or not that model is right for you, I hope you as our listeners find it inspiring or thought-provoking to think more about working together in many different aspects and what that can.
Well, because there's so many ways that you can collaborate. I mean, you and I doing the podcast is a great example of how you can do something that's not just writing together. And shortly after we finished the interview, Dana came up to me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I forgot to share one of the biggest collaborations with you as an example." And so I told her, I was like, "Hey, I'll make sure we get it in. So let me share it here real quick." But Dana Patterson has partnered with Julie Bull. And it started off as a GPA Grant Summit workshop where they were just talking about being reflective and looking back on your year and planning for the next year. And they got so much fantastic feedback from that session during 2023, which is when I set in on that. And it really was amazing that the two of them came together and have created some retreat experiences for working on yourself, planning ahead, figuring out the next year, collaborating with other people as well. They had a great time in January. I know they did one of their first big, like in person. It was like in the Sequoia National Park or something like that, I believe. And I have no doubt that the two of them are going to continue to do different retreats and things like that. So if you're at all interested, we'll have links in the show notes with connections to Dana and all of her work, so you can find that out there. So highly recommend the work she and Julie are doing together.
Absolutely.
So once again, thanks for joining us. We're always honored that you give of your time to the Fundraising HayDay podcast. So thank you for being here with us. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks, where we're going to talk about the many ways to make sure your agency or your client is truly prepared for grant seeking success. Here's a pro tip. It's more than having a few attachments in a folder.
It's true.
It's more than that. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, y'all.